So I'm very happy because I've got this amazing opportunity to interview my lovely dear friend Rafi Morrow. And Rafi, it's just great to see you. And we are incredibly lucky to be assisted by our friend Joni Strickfaden, who we will see later. And she's amazing, and she's helping with all the tech stuff, and she's going to come on later and ask some questions. So I just can't wait to get started, Rafi. So let's begin. So I have to write my questions down, otherwise I don't remember them. And oh, I better just say something, I suppose, about myself. So I'm Mandi Solk, and I've gotten to know Rafi kind of through the Course in Miracles groups, because I wrote a book called Isness is Your Only Business. And every Monday we've been having a group, thank you, where I read out a poem and then we sort of talk about it really, the group, and we also talk about some of the how it can be similar to the Course in Miracles and things. And that's how I've met Rafi, because Rafi is one of the people who has attended the meeting, but is a teacher in his own right as well. So the reason I want to do this interview, because I'm a sucker for Hollywood and all that stuff, and to find out that anyway, I did kind of recognize you, but I couldn't quite place it when I first met you. And I just wanted to know about Hollywood and how you got into there, and how your sort of spiritual path came about. So so I'm going to ask my first question. So just enjoy it. And so my first question is really, what was your childhood like? And before you answer, what were your parents like? Did you have any brothers and sisters? Did you find that you were a natural performer? So I'm going to shut up and you just tell me.
Okay, well, I was born in the Bronx, in New York, to two of the best parents anybody could possibly have ever had. I mean, they were just people trying to, get through the next day, but they did it in a way that was beyond, when I look back on it, beyond what anybody could expect to be really good. My mother was not only the best cook in the world, she was the epitome of kindness and giving and loving. My father passed down wisdom to me that I didn't realize. And when I was little, he said to me once, he said, treat everybody the same, treat them with respect, because you don't know what they're going through. And then
Mm.
when I talked to I have a brother and a sister. My brother's 10 years older than me. My sister was 8 years older. She has left her body. My brother's 96 now. And when I told my brother that, he said the same thing to me. And there was one another thing. When I graduated the eighth grade from this Catholic grade school I went to, where the nuns beat us quite frequently, um, he wrote in my book, the path through life is not one where you can depend on anything. You have to do it yourself. I'm paraphrasing, but in other words, take responsibility for your own life. So I mean, these wisdom thing. I don't even think he knew what his motivation was, but he was always passing this stuff down to us. And he was a guy who, he was just a guy. He worked two jobs, and my mother and father were the epitome of what America offers, because they both are immigrants. They lived the American dream by working hard and applying themselves. My father worked two jobs. My mother worked two jobs. They still were able to raise the family beautifully, where there was a great deal of love and understanding and kindness and acceptance. And they moved up the American dream. They from this economic strata to this economic strata, to able to finally buying their own home, and then moving to the suburbs to buy even a better home. But all the time, all of that stuff was being done not only for them to elevate the quality of their life, but to elevate the quality of our lives.
Mm.
That was and so when I pieced all this together when I was a grown up, I realized how incredibly blessed I was as a child. Even with all the stuff that the nuns were doing with the hitting, with the sticks, with the rulers and after a while, when I got to be a grown up, I realized how much torture those nuns must have been going through. Sexually deprived, uh, not really knowing how to teach children in the school. Just be appointed to that. You go do that, and then you didn't want to be around when they were menstruating because then you really got it. And then I thought, look at how tortured their lives must have been, how they had to suffer all of that. And, we're supposed to be all equal in the eyes of God, but not in the Catholic Church. There's the strata, then there's the next strata, there's the supervisor or the mother superior. And then you look at the priests, and there are priests and bishops and cardinals. And then where's the equality? And
Mm.
then and the thing that used to get me was that if we're all equal in the eyes of God, why do I have to go to somebody else to confess my sins so he can forgive me?
Mm. Did you think that when you were young, or did you?
No, but I put it together later on
Yeah.
as I was going through my teen years. All of that stuff started to strike me. But I was so involved in chasing girls that I didn't really dwell on it too much until I got much older. But my childhood in the neighborhoods that I grew up were completely homogeneous. I mean, they were every nationality, every race, every religion that existed in the world that lived on my block. So nobody was ever judged. There was
Mm.
no such thing as racism. There was no such thing as anti-Semitism. My best friend, but between the ages of 6 and 9, was a kid named Johnny Maddox. This was the 1940s. Was a kid named Johnny Maddox who lived 3 houses away from me. His father was black, his mother was white. Nobody ever mentioned it. They were just the Maddox family. That's it. I don't want to go through all of that, but all of the examples. But that's just one of the examples. This stuff. I didn't know what prejudice was. I didn't know what anti-Semitism was until I was in my 20s. I
Mm.
had no idea what that was. And,
Mm.
and people started to, what? What are you talking about? What do you mean he's a Jew? That's my friend Basil. What are you talking about?
Mm.
And a guy from Oklahoma, I don't know what them Jews are like. I ain't never seen me no Jew. What are you talking about? It's like it boggled me. And then I finally got it. The people who were brought up differently and how blessed I was in the way I was brought up. And by the time was 9, I knew I wanted to be an actor. I mean, in the school,
Yeah, tell me about that.
in school, when something came up, if I had a chance to get up in front of the class and entertain, I did.
Great.
And it was all improv. I didn't know how to prepare anything, but everybody laughed.
So
And
it's
everybody,
mainly comedy, mainly comedy. That's what you did, made people laugh.
yeah, and there was acceptance. And the nuns didn't hit you when you did that. Ooh.
Yeah.
Um, and then when I got into high school, I started doing programs in the auditorium all the time. And then we do our school plays. So I was in the school plays all the time. And one day we coming out of rehearsal with my friend, who eventually we wound up having a comedy team together. I, he said to me, he said, last night we were juniors in high school. He said to me, last night I made up my mind. I decided I wanted to be an actor. And I said, I did that last night.
Wow.
I said I came to that same thing. We did it, so we became close. And after a while, we started to have this comedy team where we perform all around the area and in various, functions and things like that. People would ask us to come and perform. And then I went off to college. He went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. I have to tell you, you know who Anne Bancroft is, right? The actress.
Oh,
Okay, Anne
yes.
Bancroft and my sister were buddies when they were teenagers,
Ah,
and she went to the Academy, American Academy of Dramatic Arts, to to study acting. And when I was in grade school, I thought if high school, if that's where she went, that's where I'm going. And in fact, I talked to her about it a couple of times before that because she lived in my neighborhood. Um, Again, neighborhoods, community, vital to me. Family. My family, okay, here's the power of the family. I'm Italian. Our dinners, Sunday dinners, holiday dinners, we'd sit maybe 12, 14 people of various generations around the table, eat like crazy for 5 or 6 hours, take a break between courses, and men would walk around up and down the street, check the scores of the ball game. The women would all be in the kitchen hustling around and doing stuff. But those meals would last for 4 or 5 hours.
wow.
And there were course after course after course. And everybody would be talking at once, and everybody knew what everybody was saying. One Christmas, here's an example of my family. One Christmas, my mother and father went to an orphanage and got a 9-year-old girl and brought her home so she could have the experience of having a family Christmas.
Oh, wow.
Who
Yeah.
does that? Mom
Mm,
and dad. That's who does that.
yeah.
But when I was in college, I my roommate happened to be a guy I went to high school with. And one morning I got up, it was before our final exams, and I got up, it was about 8 o'clock in the morning, and he says, "What are you getting up so early? Your first test is at 11 o'clock." I said, "I'm getting out of here. I can't stay here anymore. I don't want to do this anymore." He said, "Where are you going to go?" I said, "Well, my sister doesn't live too far from here." He says, "Wait, I'll drive you." He had a car. He got up, he got dressed, and he drove me. I went there. My father, when I told my mother and father I wanted to be an actor, they were uh, stunned. I go upstairs in the house where we live, and I hear my father saying as I'm leaving the room, he had to pick the one job that I can't help him with. That's just, but
Oh,
he did because when my brother wanted to be a doctor, they moved heaven and earth to make sure he could go to medical school. And but my father arranged for me to get a job at the company that he and my mother worked for, so I could make enough money so I could go to dramatic school. So he did find a way to help me because that's the way they were.
oh,
That's how they were. Um, and so I went to the American Academy and I graduated. And I was doing summer stock for free. They were paying me $8 a week for food. And I get a telegram. You remember telegrams?
oh, yeah.
I get
Just,
a telegram from a director that I had in the American Academy saying he's directing a musical of Gypsy starring Giselle McKenzie, and he wants me to be in the show. Go to New York, get your equity card, go to the agent, sign the contract, and get up here to this thing as soon as you can.
what year was that, do you think?
1962.
Huh? Go.
And so the next thing I know, I'm in an equity show. I'm getting paid a lot of money. I'm doing what I'm loving, and I'm been working with a star. One night, one day, we were in these big tents that seat like 3,000 people. That's where we performed. And we're rehearsing one day in the tent, and that night, Pal Joey is playing, starring Steve Lawrence. And Eddie Gourmet was there. She wasn't in the show up there, married, so that she was able together. So after rehearsal, I missed my ride back to the motel where we were staying. Steve Lawrence, at the time, big star, walks over to me and says, "You need a lift?" I said, "Yeah, I have." He said, "Our whole motel is right across the street from yours. Come on." We get in the car. We're driving through the Rhode Island countryside. I'm sitting next to two people. And Steve Lawrence and Eddie Gourmet are sitting in the front seat, and they start singing.
Oh, Edie Gomez. Oh, really?
I'm in the business. I'm here. I made it. Well, it's over 60 years later, and I'm still in the business. You
Oh,
know, you spend the whole life doing what you love and loving what you do, and they pay you for it. Excuse me, am I blessed? Hello. Uh, But then, and I had, various relationships. And then one day I'm in New York. I was working for the television show Candid Camera. Then I worked as a disc jockey in a disco and an MC. A woman walks in. She says she doesn't have car fare home. Could I lend her $5? And I said, sure. So I lend her $5. Next night she comes back to pay me the $5, and a lovely black lady, and she just starts flirting. We start flirting, so I ask her out. So she tells me, she says, I have to tell you, I'm a single parent and I have a son. And I said, well, we were going to walk around Central Park. Why don't you bring him? So she brings him, and I see him, and I realized that the night before I had had a dream and saw him in the dream.
No. Good heavens.
We're walking through the park. I put him up on my shoulders because he's tired. And after a while, she said, isn't he getting heavy for you? I said, did you ever see the show Boys Town? She said, yeah, Spencer Tracy, Ricky Rooney, why? I said, you remember the phrase, he ain't heavy, he's my brother? I said, well, this kind of applies right here, right now. Anyhow, she moves in to my apartment with him. And then I decide I'm going to move to Los Angeles. So I moved she said, I'll go with you. That's great. So we get in the car and I drive. There's a delivery service where you deliver somebody else's car. And it had to be delivered out here. So we drive across the country and we get to California. People start one a writer that I used to know in LA when I was doing stand-up comedy, and in New York when I was doing stand-up comedy, a guy who wrote some material for me. He had and his wife had moved out. He had become a writer for a quiz show, Hollywood Squares, and he and his wife brought us in and let us stay there for about 4 or 5 days so we could get till we found a place, and then we found a place, and then we found out, and then another woman that I had met in New York who was a very high-priced prostitute uh, and had a heart of gold. She took us around and made sure, to various places till we found the apartment that we could afford and that we liked. The kindness that I've been shown all my life is just astounding. So we move into this apartment, and then one day, about 6 months later, this woman who I'm living with comes to me and admits to herself. She has finally admitted to herself that she's a lesbian. She wouldn't admit it to herself. And now she was in her early 20s. Finally, and we had to break up the relationship. So I said, what are you going to do with Andre? She said, I don't know, put him in a foster home or something. I said, no, 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 no. You leave him with me, I'll raise him. And said she left and I became a single parent.
Wow,
I
Rafi.
wasn't planning on it, but so for the next 40 years, I was the same. He was about four at the time. For the next 40 years, I was a single parent and
Oh,
raised the most amazing young man in the world.
oh, was
And
he fortunate though to have you raising him? How absolutely wonderful. Really, I
oh,
mean,
it's kind of
amazing.
astounding, really. And he used to come to shows that I was taping. Here's a couple of examples of what happened. I'm on a TV series with Whoopi Goldberg. And I brought him along because I didn't want to pay for a babysitter. And Whoopi said, he was about 6 or 7 at the time. And Whoopi says to me, who's he? And I said, he's my son. She said, could you bring him over to me? And she gives him this big hug and says, whoa. A few years later, I'm working with Stevie Wonder and another TV a movie of the week or something. Yes, and he great guy by the way. And Whoopi is just a life of what a woman. Oh my God! And Stevie Wonder is there, and somebody whispers in his ear, and he says, "You white?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "You have a black son?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Could you bring him over here?" I said, "Okay." Andre, come here. I want you to meet Stevie Wonder. And he hugs. And
These are my heroes, by the way, Whoopi Goldberg and Stevie Wonder. I mean, you couldn't have mentioned anybody. I just adore them both.
that,
Wow.
that kind of stuff. I was on a variety show once, And I used to stick him in the audience again because I didn't have to pay for a babysitter. And and then we do warm-ups before the show, and they said, "Would you do the warm-ups?" So I used to include him. I go around with a microphone. I said, "Hey, young man, would you come here?" And he was like, 5 or 6 years old. Yeah. Uh, what would you do if somebody stole your hat? And he would say, "I would yell fire." I said, "Well, why would you do that?" He said, "Well, nobody would come if I yelled." And the audiences would, they had no idea that he was my son because and stuff like that. So I introduced him to show business, like that. And when he grew up, you identify yourself as a parent. And then when your child doesn't need a parent anymore, what do you do with that identity? It crumbles.
Yeah.
Shortly after that, we became best friends.
Oh,
And we did a children's show together that I wrote for about 10 years in schools and other venues all over the Southern California area. And he was incredible in it. He was about 6'2". He was absolutely gorgeous. Uh, Forget about the women he attracted. When the show was over, children, and the school children would run to him and climb him like he was a tree.
oh. So
Just
has he stayed in this acting career? Has he, is that what he
Yes,
does
he
now?
stayed in it for a long time. And when he couldn't get work as an actor, he got work. He used to take work as an extra, and then he had a problem with alcohol and drugs, and that lasted for about 2 or 3 years, and then he decided that's enough, and he found his way out of it.
Wow, that's
And unfortunately, he passed away when he was 44. But he had epilepsy from the time he was a child, from a fall he had when he was a child. And I was late at night. He was in his apartment. The medication wore off, and he got a heart attack and died.
all
And
right.
that's when I realized.
Yeah.
And after my wife passed away, Miriam left her body, and my parents, I just started going back through my life, and I realized everybody is here in this dream until whatever their contribution is fulfilled, and
Mhm.
then they leave the dream. Andre, Miriam, my mom, my dad. Here's how my mom left her body. She was almost 103. She was in in her home in Florida. My sister lived not too far away, and she said, "You have to have a caretaker." My mother did. What a bother! She didn't need a caretaker. She spent all her time there. I call her and say, "Mom, what you up to?" She says, "I'm driving the old people around." They were all younger than she, but she would take them to doctor's appointments, to shopping and stuff like that. That's what you know. She wakes up in the morning. The caretaker comes in and says, "Grace, would you like a cup of coffee?" And she looked around and she said, this is not a direct quote. She said, "I think this will do it." She closed her eyes and she was gone.
Oh my God,
Goes the
that's
Well,
amazing.
they're having a service for her in the church a few days later, and the priest starts to talk and mention her name, and the entire building shook.
Wow, God.
And he looked up and he said, "Yes, Grace, we know you're here." I mean, it never happened before. It never happened. There were no Rosecrooks in Florida. Okay, that was my mom. So that, like, look, and when you die, you don't go anywhere. There's no place to go. It's like Lester used to say, and a couple of other people. It's like you've been wearing this coat so you can communicate, and when
Mm,
it's time for the communication is over, you take the coat off.
yeah.
That's all you do. He said, "Oh, it's like driving a car. Carcass.
Yeah.
Okay, you get out of the car." So that was that. But then I spent all my life doing what I'm loving, and then one day, it's so typical. I'm at a Hollywood party in the Hollywood Hills. There's a pool. I used to be a pot smoker, so I'm walking around and saying, "Anybody want to share a joint?" And I hear a voice said, "I'll have some." And I look over, and there is this gorgeous woman, and I hear somebody say, "That's the one." And then I
Right now,
realize
I'm going to pause
I'm
now
and I'm the one that said
because
it.
I'm going to ask Joni if she will put a picture up of
Okay.
Miriam, sorry, and I think this would be picture. Hang on, Joni. I'll just because we've numbered them, so we know what we're doing. One, two, three, four, five. Oh, yes, it's number five. Number five. So it's the close-up.
I
Um,
just thought it was fascinating that I said that's the one, and I realized that I was the one that had said it. But here's how it happened. Years before, I was watching a television documentary series, and there was a woman who introduced a series called Mumsy the Mermaid. It was Miriam. And I thought, whoa, what a hottie. A
yes.
few months later, I'm in LA and I'm at my cousin's house, who's also an actor, and we're sitting there watching a documentary called Egypt, Quest for Eternity, made by National Geographic. And we're loving this film. And at the end, it says written and produced by Miriam Birch. And I said, well, I don't know who this Miriam Birch is, but she knows how to make a film. And then it was about a year later, we were at the party, and there she was. So I was already entranced with her about 5 or 6 years before I even met her.
Oh, she's absolutely beautiful. Absolutely
And what a
beautiful.
talent! She was a great singer
Yeah.
and a great writer and a great producer. There wasn't anything she couldn't do.
Okay, thanks, Joni. We'll take that off now. Thank you so
And
much.
because of her, my life, which was here when I met her, went to here. And because of her, I traveled all over the world. She
Oh,
loved to travel, so we went all over. We're going to Paris. I've been to Paris because of her. I've been to Paris 18 times
wow.
because of because of Miriam. I was able to go into the house my mother was born in southern Italy, the town my grandmother was born in. I was because of her. I was in Turkey. Who goes to Turkey? I would like to go to Turkey. Okay, you know, uh, uh, Portugal. She made a film about Spain, and the guy who was the advisor and was a member of the Spanish government, and he had a home in Tangier in Morocco, and he invited her to come to stay. And she said, "You want to go?" Yeah. So I wound up, staying in the Casbah in Tangier, Morocco.
Wow.
I mean, who the heck? The only time I ever went anyplace was when I went someplace on location, to shoot a film or something.
Yeah.
Where are we shooting this? We're shooting this in uh, Canada. Okay, boom. I go to Canada. We're Portland, Oregon. Okay, I'm where this Texas. Okay, and that was the only time I ever went anywhere. And then because of her, all over the world. We're going to Budapest. Oh, really? Oh, okay.
How
It's
long were
just
you together, Rafi? How long were you together?
almost 40 years.
Oh,
And you
wow.
know what? We were never married.
Uh-huh.
We never had a wedding ceremony. It came up once, and I said, "You want to get married?" He says, "No, not really." and, and so it never came up again. It's just not. Wasn't a thing. We knew we were going to be together for life, and I don't know how we knew, but we knew.
That is absolutely beautiful. And there's so much I could ask you, but just because of time and everything. So, have you got any other? You've got an adopted child, or have you? Have you got an adopted child? Have you got a
Yeah.
child? Yeah, a daughter, is it?
When we found out, I did the research that Andre had a half family. What happened is this man who had a family was the one who impregnated Andre's mother. He was cheating on his wife. He also had drug and alcohol problems, and he died young. But he had 4 children. The oldest children, a girl, after she graduates college, she comes to LA to look for her half brother. So when they finally meet, I said, "Well, wait a minute. If he's my son and you're his sister, de facto, you're my daughter." And she said, "Okay."
How old was
So
she then? How old was
I
she?
just graduated college. She must have been about 21, 22.
What's she
And,
called? What's she called?
huh?
What's she called? Her name?
Savannah. Savannah.
Divana. Yeah.
And now she's married and she has a son. So I have a grandson, Khalil,
Oh,
and he graduated college and he's living in Portland, Oregon right now. And he makes films. He directs, he writes, he has a job to pay the rent, but that's where he's going with this. And his mother, by the way, has got a great voice, a terrific singer. But she and her husband sold a house in Los Angeles and moved to Florida recently. So we don't get a chance to interact as much personally as well. We do on the phone, but not personally. And but
Are you able to just keep your, is it your computer just a bit steadier? That's just moving a little
trying.
bit.
I'm
Yeah.
trying. How's that?
That's better. Yeah, carry on. And then I've got
Okay.
other things to ask you. So,
Oh, sure. And but uh, fortunately, again, I'm so blessed. Everything in my life is a blessing. I just can't believe sometimes how incredibly blessed I am. I've spent over 60 years. I've done over 100 television shows and films, scores and scores of commercials, so many plays, stand-up comedy, singing for live audience. We have this open mic cabaret thing that we call Croon in the Afternoon, where people come together and just sing. And it's so wonderful and loving, and everybody's not like most open mic cabarets where people just can't wait for you to get off so they can get on. Everybody's there pulling for each other, loving each other. In fact, a filmmaker, a cohort of Miriam, came once and saw it, and he said, "This is not like anything. This is you. You got to make a film of this." So we shot a documentary of it. It's up on YouTube. But and how we raised the money from it. People said, "You're doing what? Here, take this money. Take this money. Take." We didn't even have to ask people for money.
oh,
They wanted it. They wanted it. But that's what happens. People have come. I have neighbors who do all kinds of things for me, and I for them. I have a friend of mine who last week he said, "I don't like the way your car looked." And he had my car detailed.
oh,
It cost him almost $150. He couldn't have cared less. He wanted to make sure I was driving around in a really nice car.
oh my
I
goodness.
mean, a neighbor lady knocks on my front door and says, this beautiful flowers that you have in the front yard." She said, I just adore them. Do you know what they're called?" I said, "I don't know. My wife had them planted. I have no idea what they are." She said, "Well, I'm going to be pruning them because there's stuff in it that has to be taken. Do you mind?" I said, "Go right ahead." Uh, she came back a few days later. She said, "I have a little more work to do on your plants. I hope you don't mind." Go right ahead. They put my trash bins away. They took
Oh,
people used to volunteer to babysit my kid if I had to go on, location. Well, we'll take care of them. I'll come and stay at your house.
well, God, it's just a reflection of your massive heart, which you radiate. It just is. So that I just want to move on to that really
Yes,
because,
please.
when did you so what was your spiritual path? I mean, did you find Leicester or did you do the course? Tell me how it went.
Miriam and I are in Florence. We go into I go with this big Duomo because I wanted to see the crypt where Michelangelo is buried. And there are tour groups all over inside this huge cathedral, this Duomo. And as I'm looking at, there's a door open to the side, and I'm looking in it, and there's like these showcases that are around the wall, glass showcases with relics and things in them. So nobody's looking. So I go in the room, and I'm looking around, and I come to the girdle and cowl of Saint Francis of Assisi, and I can't catch my breath. And tears start rolling down my face, and I start choking, and I fall to the floor, and I can't get a hold of myself. Finally, I was able to gather myself enough so that I could get out of the cathedral, out of the Duomo, through those crowds of tourists, and get back to I'm looking for Miriam. She said, "I couldn't find you. So I came back here to the hotel." I tell her what happens. He said, "Oh, I got to see that. That ain't going to happen again." So we go back to the cathedral, the Duomo. I show her where that room is. We walk in. I point to the thing, and it happens again.
Oh
I
my.
said, "Somebody's talking to me." I couldn't breathe. She had to help me to my feet
Just
eventually.
let me be clear. So this was Saint Francis of Assisi
Yeah.
in in a
little glass case. It was just
Wow.
the thing he wore around his waist and the thing that he wore over his shoulders.
Yeah, yeah.
And I said, somebody's talking to me. We get back to LA about 2 days later. She gets a phone. I get it. She gets a phone call from the Sedona method. She said, we know that you're an acclaimed filmmaker because she won all kinds of awards for her films. And we'd like you to consider making a documentary about the Sedona method. She said, I have no idea who you are or what you're doing. He said, well, we're doing a couple of workshops in LA this weekend and next weekend. Why don't you come? You'll see what we're about. And if you're interested, then we'll proceed. So she said, okay. She said, you want to go? I said, sure. We go to the workshop. I'm there 5 minutes. I get it.
Is Lester there? Was Lester
No,
taken?
Lester had already left his body by this
Oh,
time.
I see. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's a whole other story. Um, but I get it. Miriam doesn't, but I get it. We go back the following weekend, and I get it even more. And it just resonated with me about releasing non-loving feelings, being in touch with a higher power. Well, I mean, if Saint Francis Assisi wasn't talking to me, then who was? Okay. Um, and so I started to follow the Sedona method, but they're in Arizona. So we had these kind of makeshift workshops in LA by this couple who were running stuff, and it wasn't easy because of my phone rings. Hi, Raf Mauro. Yeah, this is Larry Crane.
Oh, wow.
Who? Larry Crane. He said, I studied with Lester for over 30 years, with Lester Levenson, and I moved to LA, and I'm starting a thing called a release technique, which is an arm of the Sedona method here in LA. Would you like to join it? Sure. And I don't know how he got my phone number. And then I started following it, and I've been following it ever since. It's 25 years later, and I'm still doing it. And every day it gets a little more clearer about how this isn't what I am, and and neither are thoughts and feelings and anything else. I don't identify with any of that stuff. And then Dove, you asked me about Dove.
I think Joni wants to ask you that one, which she'll do.
Okay,
So
I'll,
so we'll just
and
hold
and I'll
fire on that one.
then
Joni.
I'll but then I
Yeah,
got introduced to the Course in Miracles, also to inquiry. Who
yes.
am I? What am I? Where do I
Yeah.
come from? What's the source of I? And all of that was, started by Raman Maharshi. And I got that because somehow on Facebook, I was led by the nose through my whole life to Robert Adams, who was a disciple of. And so I check in with him every day. I have Yogananda's books, about self-realization, and the self-realization center, by the way, is 5 minutes from my house. Uh, and so all of this stuff, and Ho'oponopono, and all of this stuff, I've been led to it by the nose. None of this stuff was, I'm going to go check this out. It was, oh, look at this. Oh, look at that. Oh, look at this. So am I being divinely guided every step of the way? Aren't we all? Yeah. And look where I am now. Him being interviewed by this lady who writes the most incredible poems in the world,
Oh,
who
well,
enlightens everybody. And I got to tell you, at least twice a day I do cute.
oh,
At least twice a day I do. Oh, I get to think. I discriminate. I'm infinite love. I am peace. I am bliss. I am awareness. I am abundance. I'm free. I'm unlimited. I do all of that. And then I say, oh yeah, but you think you're a person who was born, going to live a while, and going to die. That is so cute. And then I wind up laughing my head off for at least 10 minutes, and, because that's the realization of the illusion.
mm,
And so that's a powerful. It's like shortcut releasing. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's like instant
absolutely.
release.
Because our paths are so similar in terms of that. Because yeah, many years ago, I mean, nothing as amazing as you. I didn't meet these people, obviously. I mean, I just came across the Sedona method, fell in love with it, made complete sense to me, bought the entire course, loads and loads of CDs and the Sedona method by Hale Dworskin,
Oh yeah,
and
Hailstone.
yeah, absolutely, all that sort of stuff, and Course in Miracles, and self-inquiry, a lot of self-inquiry, and Yogananda and all that. Very, very similar sort of path. Oh, Rafi, this is so amazing, but I think that I'm
Hey,
gonna we've not finished. I'm gonna bring Joni in. Carry on. No, what were you gonna say?
I'm going to say Lester said use everything available to get to okay, because to fulfill your purpose, use everything available, and I use every. And so do you.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Oh, thank you so much. So I'm going to bring Joni Strickfaden, who I had the great fortune to meet. Also because she through the Course in Miracles groups, and she's been the most amazing supporter for me. She just is always posting my work. She helps me on everything. Joni is a real angel. She's not just a technical angel, she really is an angel. So I'll put myself on mute, and you go ahead, Joni, and
Okay, I have three questions, and one.
Montana, Buford, Montana is the answer to the first one.
Okay. Is that where you met? Was that where you met Dove? No. So I wanted to know a little bit. I know you've known Dove Fishman for a long time, so I wanted to know about that. And 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 then after that, I wanted to know more about how you integrated your spiritual practices with your Hollywood work or the world. And then
Sure.
I have a fun question to end with.
Okay. Well, first of all, Dove and I went to high school together. We graduated Yonkers High School in 1958, and because that graduating class, it's 150 years later, and we're still all in touch.
Wow.
All of the people we went to high school, we're all in touch. I talked to two of them last week on the phone. We exchange emails all the time, Facebook stuff. We're still in touch, and we can't, well, we're too old to have another reunion because we used to have them every 5 years. How about a Zoom reunion? What a great idea. Okay. Well, I'm at one of these reunions, and I'm sitting there talking to Dove. That's not his real name.
David, yeah.
And in fact, in high school, his nickname was Fish because his last name was Fishman. So I'm saying, Fish, what's up with you? And he said, well, I follow this thing called A Course in Miracles. And I said, I follow this thing called a release technique. And we started to compare notes, and we realized it's the same. Okay, except with the release technique, you got one other thing. They hand you a tool and say, here, you need a tool to help you through this? Use this tool. So I told him about the release technique and the Sedona method, and he told me about Course in Miracles. So when I come back to LA, he lives, on the East Coast, but he says we do these Zoom things all the time. I said, well, include me in because this is great. It's a great supplement to releasing, and I've been doing it ever since. And look what I've been exposed to. People like you, people like Mandi.
It's
Okay, look at how the oneness of what we are is way more obvious than it would be if we weren't doing any of this.
I know. Yeah.
I mean, I think there was there were no such thing as coincidence. If I wasn't supposed to be talking to him at that reunion, I wouldn't be. If we weren't supposed to be doing this right now, we wouldn't be.
And having so
Every
much fun.
single moment, we are divinely guided, perfectly orchestrated by this infinite, constant, loving support every step of the way. Get out of the way and let it do its thing, which is what I do all the time. And I keep reminding how incredibly blessed I am. And the supplementary things is I'm not here to make this dream better. Okay, I'm not here to wake up from the dream. But because I follow this, the dream gets better on its own. My network keeps increasing all the time. I don't do anything about it. I have all of these loving relationships. I have perfect health because I use the body as a trigger mechanism. If something goes on in the body, It says, well, there's something in my head, in my mind that needs addressing. Thank you. Go find it. And Lester said, investigate, find your thinking, find your thinking, go to, and see where to correct it and correct it. And he and Robert Adams said the same thing. Your mind is a garbage pail. Turn it upside down, empty it out, and get to the quiet.
You've answered those questions, because I see by your example how your daily practice can be applied to anything in the world, because it's a constant rolling classroom. So here's my fun question. Are you ready?
Yeah.
If your life was made into a movie, a book, or a sitcom, would it be either a romantic comedy, a Disney fantasy, or whatever it would be? What would the title of it be? You can take a minute to think about that.
Oh, I know. I answered this question to Mandy once. The title would be Along for the Ride.
Along for the ride. Can you name some actors or actresses that you would like to play you at the different stages of your life?
I never gave that any consideration. Nobody is coming through right now.
Well, here's another option. I wonder what it would be like in a children's book or children's animation, one that would be, because of your upliftedness, because of the classrooms you went through, and that I noticed, your acknowledgement of how the divine works in your life. I wonder if it couldn't be either an animated or a children's book for inspiration. What do you
Well,
think?
interesting that you should say that, because I've had 3 children's books that I wrote published.
Oh,
And I've also written 5 more, which I don't know whenever they'll be published, but I'm not interested in that, because I'm interested in, my main purpose. Let me wake up from this dream. And if it happens, great. If it don't, I couldn't care less. And Lester used to say, you get to that point of hootlessness where you don't care, and then let it happen if it's going to happen.
yes.
The other thing is, I was telling Mandy, for about 10 years, my son and I, and other actors too, did a children's show, improvisational, interactive children's show, where we had the children on stage almost as much as we did. And we were able to channel stuff, because as soon as I found out about the methods of, spiritual methods and all this metaphysical stuff, I passed it on to my son right away. And he was going through hell at the time with alcohol and drug addiction. And because of that, he was able to kick it all.
Wow. Well,
And then go on his own spiritual journey. But if it were a children's show, it would be how to dance, how to dance to how I dance my way to heaven. I think that would be the title.
Yeah.
Because it is sort of like a dance, and nobody dances unless they're happy. No, you never saw anybody sad dance. Okay, dancing is an expression of happiness. So I think that's what it is. In the mornings, I go through an exercise where for about a half hour I'm in touch with the pure joy of being, and I keep track of it. So at the end of the day, when I'm cleaning up the day, release, and it's in the release technique, what you do at the end of the day is you write your gains down all the time, the blessings that you experienced during the day, because your ego is going to make you forget.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But if it's there in black and white, you ain't going to forget it. You go back and review it anytime you want. I go back and release Gaines books that I wrote stuff in 15, 20 years ago. And I look at the Gaines and I see how similar they are.
Oh.
Today I was in a state of awareness, or I was in complete acceptance, or I was loving all day, or I was this, or this happened. Now, about my career and how it ties in. When I first discovered the method, I used to release before, like when I was on my way to an audition, and then turn the results of the audition over to our infinite beingness and book the job. And if I didn't book the job, there was something in it that I had to address. Well, where was I coming from? Was I coming from acceptance? Oh no, I was coming from pride. Ooh, pride, very dangerous pride. Okay, bring that up and let it go. Said it was a lesson to learn. But when I perform, if it's television or films or commercial, doesn't matter, or stage, I always turn the performance over to our infinite beingness, our infinite self, the God presence, the God consciousness. Act through me, talk through me. If it's stand-up comedy, sing, be funny through me. If it's singing, sing through me. So I get the separate me illusion, that fake body mind me, out of the way. When I write, I do the same thing. I have no idea what I just sit down and I start writing, and this stuff just comes through me because I've gotten that out of the way. I passed that along to a friend of mine who has been in AA for, I don't know, so many years. He's been sober for about 15 years now, and he's a psychologist, professional psychologist. But he's very interested in, because of course, because of the AA thing, he's very interested in releasing Course in Miracles, the metaphysical path that is one step beyond AA. And when I told him about the write, he says, that's what I do when I write. I get me out of the way, and it just comes out. And I read his stuff. You know what? His stuff is good. But that's the whole thing. Just get it out of the way. And I do that. And people, directors come over after I finish. We shoot a scene and we're wrapping, and they'll come over, and very rarely, because they're moving on to the next thing, they very rarely take time to come over and shake your hand and thank you for your contribution and stuff, because they got to get on to the next scene. It's being lit now. They got to get the sound right. And let's run through this thing. They always take the time to come over and talk to me. And I don't see them doing that with other people. And the same thing happens. Well, I don't want to go on and on, but it happens all the time. Strangers say hello to me on the street all the time.
You're an
They
extension.
walk by hi. Huh?
You're an extension of love, Rafi.
Well, I have other people who remind me of that all the time, because I tend to forget. Like Miriam and I were at this film festival at the Directors Guild, a French and American film festival where they do both. So we're sitting waiting for one of the theaters. There's about 5 or 6 theaters in that one area, screening rooms, and we're waiting for one of them to exit so we can get in to see our film. And a young woman walks by who is a volunteer usherette ticket taker. And we decided that she should be our granddaughter. So we approached her and said, we decided that you should be our granddaughter. And she said, okay. Well, for the last 8 years, I've had a granddaughter.
Aw.
And she considers her family. She considers me, and I consider her family. Because I come from family, and family was the central focal point. Community is very important to me. And a lot of my physical family, because of my age, have passed away, have gone. So I keep acquiring family.
It's the Italian way.
That's it. So I have a daughter, I have a granddaughter, I have a grandson, I have son-in-law, I have other people, and they don't mind. It's okay with them.
Well, I just have you exhausted your questions, Joni? Or are you sure? Okay, thank you very much indeed. First of all, this is this is absolutely amazing. And I know we've only skimmed the tiny surface, Rafi, but everything you've said is such an inspiration. This
Oh,
video is going to really, really resonate with people and be very helpful. All of that about getting out of your own way and just allowing things to come to you, because whenever, yeah, we have to get out our own way because whenever we think that we're in control, I mean, we're just not in control, and that's when everything goes wrong. I always see myself like there's a big ship in front of me, and it's pulling me in a little, it's towing me along, and I'm just happily just allow. I don't know where we're going, but I'm just happily going up and down in the boat, and just just being led and when life's like that, it's great. And it can always be like that because of releasing and letting go and
and
everything.
you've had moments of clarity and awakening, haven't you?
Oh yeah, I've got a lot. Yeah.
And so have I. So we
Yeah.
know the truth.
Yeah.
It's not just, something we're making up or something we're hearing from other people and repeating because we've had the experience. I mean, I've actually seen this body as an image, as
Mm.
a projected image, and the truth of what I am radiating through it, not once, several times. So I know that unless he used to say, you don't just know, you know that you know that you know that you know. And the great thing about releasing is that if a feeling comes up right on this, you let go of it on the spot. What is that? Wanting approval, wanting control, wanting safety. Okay, I can feel it. Can I let this go? And just answering the question, the process completes itself. And so the more I clear out, and you get to the point, like yesterday, I was on a Course in Miracles thing, and Brooklyn was, she had just come back from the dentist, and as a result, she had a mouth open for an hour. She got a really sore throat. And she was saying, it's hard for me to talk. We got. I said, okay, is that wanting approval, wanting control, or wanting to be safe? And she said, it's wanting control. I said, do you feel it? She said, oh, I feel it right here and I feel it in my throat. I said, could you let go of wanting control? It's just a question. Like, it was Tuesday, like today's Tuesday. Is today Tuesday? And she said, yes. And then I released it through it some more, some more, some more. And then I got to the point now where I said, you feel like you have a little control? She said, yeah. I said, could you let that expand? She said, yes. I said, now could you let go whatever you're feeling to see if it gets any better? Yes. Could you let go whatever you're feeling to see if it gets any better? Yes. Could you let go whatever you're feeling to see if it gets any better? Okay, now what are you experiencing? Not what you're feeling. What are you experiencing? And she said, love. And I
Oh, wow.
said, that's what we are.
Mm.
The self is love. That's what we are. So you're home.
Oh,
And
that's
and
it's
and,
pure
and
stuff.
the throat started to feel better.
Oh, I don't doubt it. But the other thing as well that you were saying earlier, which is immensely helpful, and I do something similar. I think we've had that discussion before when you write down the gains, and I've
Yeah.
got a little gratitude jar and I write down it's exactly the same. It's the things I'm thankful for that happened in
Yeah,
the
no, I do. Yes, absolutely. I got a whole list that I go through.
But that's it. But the thing is, it's so important that because the tendency to make ourselves small and whip ourselves and only remember all the things we've done wrong and just forget about the things we've done right is what most people are, that's what keeps people asleep. And when we fall ourselves into a sleepness, that's what we're doing. Somehow we're beating ourselves. Oh, I'm so stupid or whatever. It's terribly dangerous stuff, and it's absolutely not what spirit, you know, the I am presence of ourselves wants for us. It wants us to love ourselves as much as it loves ourselves. Though it's just one love, as you say, it's the substance of everything.
I said to Brooklyn yesterday, I said, if your throat was a little child that came to you crying and in pain, would you criticize it or would you pick it up and love it? She said, love it. So I said, then why don't you just love your throat? I said,
Oh,
you
that's
just get love, love it, love it. What's stronger than that?
oh,
That's
And
why.
I 2 days ago, a thing popped out of my subconscious, an incident that happened when I was 6 years old about a cat that had kittens in our basement, and a door was locked when she was moving into someplace else, and one of the kittens died. And I blamed myself. I wasn't even part of it, but I, for 80 years, that's been running through my subconscious. What a bad guy I was because I made that kitten die. I had nothing to do with it. But my mind decided that, the ego mind decided that I was at fault. So I brought it up and I let it go and saw nothing but love for the people around me and love for that little child. And then realized, what is that? It's just a picture. What are memories? What are thoughts? They're just pictures. Let the picture dissolve and evaporate. And it did. But I mean, look at one of the great things about the release technique is that when you let go of one of the wants, you're letting go of a bunch of subconscious thoughts underneath that you didn't even know were there. So there's an extra bonus, there's an extra benefit. And when Lester said there's two ways you can go. You can get rid of all the negativity, or you can put in the positive so strong the negativity doesn't have a chance. But isn't that what they do with the Course of Miracles? Put in
Absolutely.
the positive so strong that the negative doesn't have a chance?
All right. You're such an inspiration. I tell you what, people are going to want to speak to you. They're going to want to speak to you. Oh, I'm going to have to, you're going to have to help me find a title for this because when you write a title on YouTube, you don't get many words for the actual title. So, I mean, I want to put your name, Rafi Moreau, and then a dash, like it would be like dancing your way to heaven or along for the ride, or what would you like us to put as that title?
A couple of things jumped into mind. One came up was, I wish I knew me better. Um, uh, how much longer is this going to take? I'm dying to wake up. I
How much sugar?
thought, well, if you died in a body,
You're awake.
you wake up.
Mhm.
Yeah, you're awake anyway, you are.
That's something Lester said.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, but those are a couple of things that I
I wish
like
I
to.
knew me better. I think that's so funny. That's really lovely. Anyway, you can let us know you know,
Right, if I think of some, I'll email it to you. Okay.
okay, yeah. Thank you so much. And oh, it's been really an absolute privilege. It really, really has.
Let me just interrupt you.
Yeah.
I saw the Course in Miracles thing this morning, where this woman goes on for an hour about all of the stuff, and she's very, very good. So when I got on, she said, "Oh, there's Rafi," and I went like that. She said, "What does that mean?" I said, "That's sign language for I love you." She said, "Oh, I thought it was some high school thing." I said, "No, that's how you say I love you. This is how you say I love you very much, and
Oh,
this is how you say thank you."
brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So we're going to stop the recording now, but don't rush off. Just give us a few minutes.
Sure.
And yeah, and thank you